Today, on this teaching edition of the podcast, I want to talk about the prophet's meditation. The prophet's meditation comes from this ancient story from the Hebrew scriptures about a prophet named Elijah. Now, I read that story before, I'd heard that story before, years and years past, but recently when I was rereading it, something struck me for the first time. Because, probably, I've been practicing more concentrated prayer. I've been practicing meditation. Our culture is a little bit obsessed with meditation these days, and it's nothing new. This has been going on from the origins of humanity, but we're starting to see in our over-digitized, crazy-paced, overwhelmed culture that we are craving stillness, that our souls are longing to be still, to be connected to something bigger, to have wisdom that goes beyond just the hurriedness of the information overload that we experience and the pace of life. And so people are catching up and they're saying, hey, maybe there's something to this meditation thing. Maybe I should get in touch with something beyond just what I hear, see, and touch. Maybe I should get in touch with myself and who my designer has made me to be. So I love that our culture is paying attention to this. And I wanted to highlight meditation from thousands of years ago in this somewhat famous story about Elijah. Now, Elijah was the Hebrew prophet, and this guy was famous in his day, still famous today. This guy had some incredible victories, miracles, spoke to thousands and thousands of people, healings, these amazing feats of strength and impressive wins. In this one occasion, he was coming up against these prophets of a god believed to be kind of all-powerful in the region called Baal. And Elijah said, hey, here's the deal. If Baal is real, let's put up two altars. We'll build them with rocks. We'll put these bulls on top of them. And whichever altar catches on fire first, let's just say that God is supreme. So I'll pray to my God, who I think is the one true God, and you pray to your God, this Baal character, and then we'll just see what happens. So this 100 plus, all these Baal worshipers and prophets they're crying out, they're begin cutting themselves because Baal's not responding, and Elijah's taunting them. He's like, hey, maybe he's sleeping. Shout a little bit louder. No, I really think this is gonna work. Go ahead, try, guys, keep going. And don't give up yet. A little bit sarcastic, or very sarcastic, and taunting these guys. And then what he does, Elijah over here on his altar, is he dumps water on it. Pours these barrels of water on it 3 times. And he says, okay, now watch this. And his water-soaked bowl altar immediately just bursts into flames. God brings fire from heaven and just consumes this thing. So I set that up as the backdrop to say Elijah was impressive, Elijah was powerful, Elijah was in tune with God, and he had just had a major win. Now, he takes it a little bit further, and he decides that all of these Baal worshipers should be killed. Let's not get into if that's right or wrong. Wrong, if you think it is, I'm probably with you. He had some historical, contextual justification for doing something like that, but maybe he got in a little bit over his head. I think he did, because after he has these guys killed, there's this intimidating word that comes from Jezebel. Jezebel says, Elijah, tomorrow you're going to suffer the same fate as these prophets that you killed. You will be dead. And Elijah panics. He panics. He freaks out. He runs the other direction. Now, that's why I think that he overstepped a little bit, because that insecurity came up in him. He forgot all about his God. He forgot all about the power and strength. He forgot about what happened the day before, and now he's running for his life. So he runs and he finds himself up in a mountain in a cave. God whispers to him, God says something to him, or I don't know how it works, it's mysterious. God gets his attention somehow and says, I want you to go into this cave, spend the night, and now come out to the edge of the cave. I'm going to let you experience my presence. Now, what happens in these moments in this cave, I think, is very relevant to you and I today. When we are desperate to get away from whatever it is we're afraid of, to get away from whatever it is that's freaking us out, to get away from the hurriedness, the stress, the anxiety, the tension, the pace of life, and to get into a place where we can experience God and get centered, if you will, get connected to ourselves, get connected to this invisible God who created us, who designed us, who has things to say to us still. Now, here's what Elijah experiences. I'm going to break it down in these 5 keys that I think we can apply here and now, thousands of years later, and how we experience God, how we hear his voice, how we get a sense of him, how we disconnect from the other distractions and get in tune with our Creator God. The first thing, we see this in the story of Elijah. The first thing is to find your cave. Find your cave. This is a place where you can be still. Find a place where you can be still. Now, let's recognize that we can experience God anywhere. He created all of this. If he's really God, then he's everywhere all the time. We can experience him in his creation. We can experience him in other people. We can experience him in our circumstances. Sometimes he's trying to get our attention through our circumstances. But here's the deal. We will be more likely to see God, sense God, experience God, hear from God in the whole of our life if we are practicing learning what his voice is like. One of the ways we do that is through reading scripture. Another way we do that is from just sitting and being still and praying. God famously indicates, he says, "Be still and know that I am God." We're still trying to figure that out thousands of years later. So what does it look like to find your cave? Find a place where you can be still. For me, there's this brown leather chair in my bedroom, and I go and I sit there. But I'll tell you, it's difficult because I have 3 young kids, 6, 4, and 2 years old. And if they're home and they know I'm home and they're conscious and they're awake, I'm probably getting interrupted after like max 5 minutes. So I have the brown chair where it's kind of like my cave. I can experience some silence. I can sit, I can pray, I can reflect on things that are true. And then I have a prayer garden. So if I need to leave the house, there's a prayer garden just a couple miles from my house that I'll go to. I'll walk this prayer garden. I'll sit at different stations. I'll be there. It's a place where I can be still. It's a place where I can connect. It's a place where I can reflect. So think in your own home, in your car, in a park, on a trail. Here, some of the keys are to be alone without distraction, to feel safe enough to close your eyes, and somewhere where you can go consistently and build a habit or a pattern. Remember, we can connect with God anywhere, but to practice it a little bit every day or at least every week, it's going to create an awareness that God is with us all the time. It's going to create a sense of recognizing his voice when we hear it if we have that kind of habit, that pattern built in. So number 1 is to find your cave. Number 2 is to wait through the winds of worry. In the story about Elijah, God says, "Here, come to the mouth of the cave. I'm going to show you my presence. You're going to experience me." The first thing that happens is this massive wind comes through, like such a strong wind that the rocks are coming off the cave and crashing down below. But the text says God was not in the wind. Whatever that means. God created the wind and all of that, so it's kind of confusing. But I think the point is God is not showing himself in the wind. He wanted Elijah to stay strong, to continue to be still, and to keep waiting for something else. That's the point. And what happens to us when we sit, when we're still, when we start to reflect, when we close our eyes and we invite God to speak to us, is that there's a wind of worry that rushes over us. You know what I'm talking about. Those thoughts that come up. Oh, what if this and this happens? Oh, I've got to get started on, this is a worst case scenario and it might play out. Oh, I've got to hustle. I shouldn't be here sitting still. I got to go further. I got to go faster. I'm not making enough money. The winds of worry come and they shake us up. Wait through the winds of worry. When those worryful thoughts, when those anxious thoughts come rushing through your mind, don't quit. Don't get up and leave and go get busy and go to work and grab your keys and get out the door. Don't stop. Wait through it. It happens to all of us. It still happens to me this week as I was sitting and praying and preparing and listening and trying to connect and be still. Those same thoughts, those worries of the circumstances of my life, of the needs, of the resources. Will there be enough? Is the timing going to work out? They flood my mind to this day. It's part of being human. It's part of wading through the extra stuff. Our minds are built to be filters based on all of our experience of life. Our brains are trying to keep us alive. So the mechanism of our brain is to try to protect us and help us by producing anxious thoughts so that we survive. And what we need to do is just tell our brain, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Thank you for bringing those things to my attention. Now settle. Now settle. And sink lower. Wait through the worry. The second thing, or the third thing, is to endure through the earthquakes of insecurity. Endure through the earthquakes of insecurity. Hopefully you can read that. If not, I'm sorry. The next part of the story, Elijah, after the wind, and he waits through it because God wasn't revealing himself in the wind in that moment. Then it says there's a great earthquake. And the foundations of the ground, of the mountain where he is, of the cave that he's in, are shaken and cracked. Same thing happens to us. When I sit and I'm still and I say, God, speak to me. God, I want to connect with you. God, help me to remove this worry and anxiety. I want to hear from you. I want to be on your path. I want to be about the purpose that you've put in me. I want to be about the objectives, the main things. There's a wind of worry that comes through, and if I fight through that, if I sit through that, then there's an earthquake of insecurity. And I start to hear that voice that says, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? Is this real? Does God actually speak? Well, why would he even speak to you? Is this all made up? And if people knew who you really were, what you've done in your life, your fears, your insecurities, your weakness, they're not going to want to listen to you. Why are you even sitting here? You have no Are you with me? All those little quakes of insecurity, those tapes that play in your mind, those things that have been spoken over you that affirm the fears that are already in you, those insecure thoughts, they start to come up and they start to rattle and shake. Endure through the earthquake of insecurity because God wasn't in the earthquake. He wasn't revealing himself in the earthquake. And if we can resist the urge to just get up and say, forget it. I gotta go prove myself. I gotta go work. I gotta go make money. I gotta go do my thing. If we resist that urge and we're just still, we let those thoughts drift off. And we just say, God, I'm going to let that go. I know those anxious thoughts are not from you. And I know that those insecure thoughts, those condemning thoughts, those are certainly not from you. So I'm just going to wait. I'm going to let those go. I'm going to sit. I'm going to let my mind be empty. I'm going to wait for you to show up. I want to experience you. That's why I'm sitting, standing, walking here. Then, the fourth thing is to fight through the fire alarms of to-dos. The third thing that happens when Elijah's in that cave is that there's a big fire. A fire just breaks out of nowhere. To my knowledge, Elijah didn't smoke, and he was the only one in the cave, so I don't really know where it came from. God just brought it from some way, or something else happened, some kind of lightning struck over here and the fire made its way. Who knows how God did that? But there was a fire that God wasn't, in fact, revealing himself in. But no doubt it would have caught Elijah's attention, and it might have made him uncomfortable, a little heated, and he would have been tempted to just abandon the cave and move on with his life, like we are tempted to do when the fires come up. Fight through the fire alarms of the to-dos. These things are not even bad things. These are things that you actually probably do need to do. And once you get through the worry, once you get through the insecurity, those good things, the to-do list, even like a good idea that you feel like, all right, I've been sitting here in stillness for 10 minutes. So my creativity is starting to rise up. My mind is starting to kind of get a little bit more loose and creative. And you have this idea for a project. And you're like, I got to do this, or I want to write this, or I want to create this, or I need to finish that, or I want to call that person. And they're good ideas. Have a journal nearby, jot it down, and fight through. Stay put. When I have those ideas and I am tempted to get up and to move on, for me, I consider that like moving ahead of God. So it might be a good idea, it might be the right objective, it might be the right to do, but if I just get up and move and I try to figure it out on my own, I've missed the potential of this moment. Because if we wait, endure, and fight through, something else is coming. Something else is coming. We can do the to-dos once we are clear about who we are, our connection with our Creator, and our marching orders. The to-dos will take care of themselves. I jot them down in my journal or on a legal pad, and then I push it to the side. And I keep sitting, and I keep waiting. Elijah did the same thing. And after the wind, after the earthquake, and after the fire, there's a whisper. Listen for the whisper. It seems that God often shows up in the still small voice, in the little whisper within. Not in the big extravagant wind, not in the scary earthquake, and not in the alarming fire, but after those things have passed and we continue to just commit to staying right there in the present moment, there's a whisper. And in that moment, you're like, oh, okay. That's the invisible. That's the Spirit of God. That's me tapping into my soul, which is connected to the eternal, to beyond time and space, to the God who created all of this, who designed me and still has a plan and purpose for my life. And he's still whispering. It's the same Spirit that was in Jesus, that raised Jesus from the dead. We have access to that same Spirit. He's with us all the time and everywhere. But the problem is that the world that we live in is a big distraction. It's an incredible opportunity. It's a beautiful world that we live in, and it can be a distraction from what's just out of sight. And the more successful we get in our culture, the more wealthy we get personally, or our families, or our businesses, the more busy we get, the more we begin to have this gnawing sense in our souls that it's not enough, that there's something more. And that's why so many people are starting to tap back into the essence of prayer, meditation, and connecting with their invisible God. Whatever they call meditation, maybe that's not comfortable for you. Think prayer or centering or whatever, it doesn't matter. The point is being still, being aware of God, that you are not God, and that all the urgency, all the worry, all the insecurity, all the to-dos are secondary, if not unhealthy and distracting. And the key is to start the day or to build rhythms into our life where we can habitually train ourselves to connect to the whisper, to listen to the whisperer, to connect to the Spirit, let him affirm who God has made us to be and inspire us to walk out this unique life that he has given us to live. That's how we experience peace in the midst of chaos. That's how we experience confidence even when things aren't going well. That's how we experience trust, even though the circumstances don't point to it just yet. When we hear that whisper, it solidifies who we are, our connection to our God, and gives us the courage to walk forward in our day and to keep on going. That is the prophet's meditation and 5 keys to experiencing God that you can practice today, tomorrow, this week. I would love to hear your experiences with it. Shoot me an email, message me on social media, let me know, and I will see you in the next episode.